Donald Trump is in the best position he's ever been in his political career to win a general election. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so, looking at Polymarket, we have Donald Trump at about 53% odds to win the presidency, with Wisconsin now with Donald Trump in the lead. Pennsylvania, he's also in the lead. Michigan is roughly tied. And Nevada is only a 4-point lead for Harris in the betting odds. In Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, we have pretty staggering odds for the former president as well. And this is not great for Kamala Harris because the two elections where it's been relatively competitive, the Democrats actually had 80-90% odds to win the presidential election to Trump's roughly 10-20%. Now that it's tied and he's actually up in the odds, it may signify something way greater than this kind of race. And so looking at the electoral map, starting out with the state of Oregon, this is something very interesting that we are seeing here right now. According to the latest poll, we see Harris ahead by 5 points in the state of Oregon. Looking at the 2020 matchup, we see that right now Joe Biden actually was leading by around 21.3 percentage points in the aggregate here. And when looking at the final result, Kamala basically being at the bottom of the ticket and Joe Biden being at the top, they won by 16.1%. And looking at that slight difference, that's a little bit over a 5-point overestimation for Joe Biden in the state of Oregon. And so when we actually map this out, Oregon would actually be in the tilt Democrat category. Now, again, there's only one poll. More than likely, it will not be in the tilt category, but when adjusting the current polling from the previous election, we do get a tilt Oregon in this video. Nevada is another interesting one because when we actually look at the state of Nevada, we see that Joe Biden, as of right now, according to the election, right now, he would be leading by 6.8%, and currently, it's literally a tie. And so when you shift that roughly 6 points to the right from Biden's 2.4 percentage point win, you have a lean margin in the state of Nevada of about 3 points for Donald Trump. Arizona, another fascinating battleground state, one that Joe Biden won. Donald Trump's up by 1.3%. This day, 4 years ago, Joe Biden was up by 3.7%. So that roughly, give or take, is almost around 5-point shift. That would put the state of Arizona in the likely Republican column due to it roughly being tied back in 2020. Colorado, another fascinating state we see here in the state of Colorado. The latest polls do have Harris up by a combined 12-point average. They did actually, looking at the aggregate here, at the 9th, it was about an 11.8 percentage point win. So these do actually underestimate Joe Biden. So that will just be in the likely Democrat column. New Mexico in this forecast is another pretty interesting map too, because this day, not that long ago, 4 years ago, 13.8%. I mean, Joe Biden won the state by basically 10.8. So that's a 3-point overestimation. And when looking at the latest aggregate, you see Harris plus 8.2%. So that would just be a 5-point victory in New Mexico when you adjust for the polling data. Texas, another key battleground. We see over here Donald Trump is up by 6.5, but as of this day in 2020, we see that Donald Trump was only leading by 1.7%. He ended up winning by 5.6. That's almost a 4-point underestimation. That puts the state at around a 10-point win for Donald Trump. We currently have the state as a 14-point win in our forecast. Looking at Iowa, this is another fascinating one. We see the state of Iowa, I mean, it's just barely going to Donald Trump in some of the 2020 polling here. Actually, we can go to the 9th, and we'd actually see Joe Biden up by 1.1%. And right now, Donald Trump won the state by 8.2. That's a 9-point underestimation of Donald Trump there. And looking at the current aggregate, it seems like, as of right now, if you were to average this out, Donald Trump would be leading by roughly, give or take, around 5.5 percentage points. And so if you apply that underestimation, you do actually get almost a safe Iowa in this matchup. Nebraska second is interesting because if we do go to the 2nd congressional district, we will see that Joe Biden was polling ahead by 3.8% when he actually ended up winning by a decent amount. But if we actually look here on October 9th, 4 years ago, Biden was ahead by 7.2. However, we do see that Kamala Harris, or at least Joe Biden, only won it by 6.6. So the current aggregate is overestimating there by around a point. And so if we were to average out some of these latest results, it really doesn't matter, because right now Kamala Harris is just destroying Donald Trump there. So more than likely that will probably end up going to Kamala. We see in the state of Minnesota, another key battleground state, very interesting, 5.8% lead. But in 2020, we actually see that Joe Biden led the aggregate by 9 points when it was only roughly, give or take, a 7.1 percentage point win. So applying that to the current aggregate, we actually see just about a 3-point win in the state for Kamala Harris, which is not great considering that Joe Biden won the state by 7 back in the previous cycle. Wisconsin is another key battleground state as of right now, just a tilt margin for Kamala Harris. Looking back just a few years ago, we see Biden led by 7.3% as of roughly 4 years ago from today. And we look at the results, 0.6%. That's roughly a 7-point overestimation. So if we were to apply that to this, we'd actually see about a 6.8 percentage point margin for Donald Trump in the state of Wisconsin. Very, very fascinating stuff. Looking at Michigan, another key battleground state that Joe Biden picked off in the previous election, we see Kamala's just up by a single, roughly just 1.7%, or it's actually a point as of, today. But we look at 2020 on October 9th, just a few years ago, 8.2%, a 7-point shift in the state. And it was around a 2.8 percentage point shift. So when you basically get a 3-point shift and apply a 7-point swing, that is a 4-point win in Michigan, which is actually around almost where we have it. We have a little bit of over 5, but we clearly see a lean margin from the adjusted polling. Ohio, another key battleground that Donald Trump has now turned into a safe Republican state. On October 9th, Joe Biden did lead it by 0.9%. On election day, Donald Trump won it by 8. So again, another 9-point overestimation of Joe Biden. And we can now see literally a 9-point lead for Trump in Ohio. This actually puts the state in the safe category when you apply the adjusted aggregate there. Looking at the state of Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral college votes, if we were to apply this, we see a very, very tilt margin there, 0.4% in that aggregate. Looking back just a few years ago, look at that, 7.1%, literally only a 1.2 percentage point lead. Looking at the aggregate now, that's a 7-point shift. It just is. That's a 7-point shift to the right. If you apply that to Pennsylvania, that's actually roughly a 6-point victory in the state. So around the same as Wisconsin, give or take. A little bit under Wisconsin, but fairly interesting as of right now. Virginia, another key battleground state, just a 7.5-point lead. On October 9th, we did see that the state actually overestimated Joe Biden by 2.5%. So if you were to apply that to the current aggregate, we actually see just about a 5-point win in the state according to the adjusted polling. North Carolina, a state where the polling tends to be pretty abysmal. Currently, Donald Trump is up by a point in the state, roughly, give or take. Looking at October 9th, we did see Joe Biden up by 3 when Donald Trump won the state by 1, 4-point underestimation of Donald Trump. So if we were to apply that, a 5-point win on the way in North Carolina. Georgia, another battleground state that Joe Biden flipped in the last election. Donald Trump leads by 1 in the aggregate, and we do actually see here on October 9th, Joe Biden was actually ahead by 0.9. So that's a slight overestimation of the final result. So we can leave that in the lean Republican column in this video. Florida, another key battleground. We can see here a 5.2 percentage point lead for Trump. However, looking at October 9th, we see that Joe Biden was up by 4.3%. Donald Trump won it by the reverse margin of 3.4. That's a 7-point underestimation. So if you were to apply that to this, that's roughly a 12-point win in Florida, which is roughly where we have it at right now. Looking at New York, this is interesting because it's a deep blue state, but the polling errors here actually tend to be pretty bad. And when you look at the lead, it's a 14-point lead for Harris. But when you look at the 2020 aggregate and you see what happened, we saw a 31-point win for Joe Biden. on October 9th when it was only 23 points. That's roughly an 8-point overestimation. And so if you were to apply that to this aggregate, you would only get a 6-point win for Kamala in the state of New York, which is actually a little bit less of the margin than what we have. I think we have it at about 8 points for Harris, but that's roughly where that is. Maine's first congressional district, if we actually go to Maine right now, we will see that in 2020, the first district, a 20-point lead. That actually underestimated Joe Biden, so we'll go ahead and put that safe just for the sake of things. Actually, let's look at October 9th just to play it safe. Okay, no, this does actually overestimate Kamala. It's still going to be safe regardless, or Joe Biden. It's still going to be safe. But look at the second district. That is ridiculous. October 9th, it actually had a 1-point lead for Biden, but Trump ended up winning it by 7, an 8-point miss. So when we currently look at the aggregate now in Maine second, we'd see roughly, give or take, it'd probably be around the same margin, maybe a few points for Trump, but roughly in that ballpark. In Maine would more than likely be in the likely category. As of right now, we can probably go to the all vote and clearly see that the last two polls do average out to a 7-point lead for Harris. And if we actually go ahead and look at the aggregate here, we do actually see on October 9th, it is actually pretty abysmal. I mean, that's actually pretty bad. About a 15-point lead, and it was only a 9-point win. So that actually does put the state more competitive than I actually even realized it to be. That actually puts in the lean column. And New Hampshire, the final battleground state for us to fill out on this map in October 9th, we actually do see a 11-point lead there for Joe Biden when it was only a 7-point win for Joe Biden in the last cycle. So when we go ahead and apply that to the current aggregate, we actually only get about less than a 3-point win in the state of New Hampshire for Kamala Harris. And so when you look at that adjusted aggregated polling, you apply the polling error from the previous cycle, looking back exactly 4 years ago, and you see Donald Trump is in a position to win most of the swing states pretty easily, even without his lean states. I mean, he's already winning 275 right out the gate, guys. And so that is pretty much it for this video. If you guys did enjoy this, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And make sure to go ahead and check out betonline.com, where you can look at basically the latest betting odds for anything politics. So you can go over here and look at who's the favorite to win. Donald Trump currently, I believe, is actually the favorite to win the election, according to this market. We do see how you can rate the individual states. So, for example, Arizona, as of right now, Donald Trump is currently the favorite to win it as of this moment. In Maine, currently, Donald Trump is the underdog in the state. You can also bet on the actual margins of how the states are going to go. And we can also see the presidential debate. Is the October 23rd CNN debate going to happen? We can also see here something with Trump specials. You can bet on favorabilities. So again, pretty interesting. And U.S. Senate, you can also bet on those as well. And the House of Representatives. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe. Follow me on X, and we will see you guys very, very soon.